What's the matter, Kakarot?
Good morning and welcome to another Sunday morning with the Blerd Church of Anime. I am your preacher, your teacher, your pastor, your cult leader, whatever you want to call me. My name is Blackstar. I'm here to be with you, lovely folks, for another Sunday morning where we talk about uplifting things, but with anime as the twist. This has been a week, Thanksgiving. So hopefully some people had a chance to have some time off. I don't want to just assume because a lot of people have service jobs where you can't take that time off. Maybe some people had Friendsgiving. Maybe they were with their friends and family. Last week's sermon message, whatever you want to call it, dealt with like making sure you felt good about yourself. This week, I am pulling a little bit into culture. And we'll talk about it when we get there. But before I get into all of that, I do want to say, despite, all right, because of the Thanksgiving holidays and family and the eating holiday and all that kind of stuff, I hope you had a fantastic week. I hope you had a chance to be around people you liked. I hope you had a chance to eat the food that you wanted. I hope you had a chance to rest and relax if you needed to, or grind if that's what you wanted. And if you did not do those things, if you weren't able to be around family you liked or friends that you wanted, or you didn't get the food that you wanted, because that would be a terrible week for Thanksgiving if I could not have my macaroni and cheese and sweet potatoes, then I want to say F last week. You don't have to wait till Thanksgiving to cook or get the food you want. So maybe you didn't get your turkey or chicken or whatever you may like. You know what? It's probably cheaper now that Thanksgiving's over. Yeah, so if you didn't get what you wanted last week, F last week. This is a new week. We are going into December. Tomorrow is December, the last month of 2025. That is wild to say. This has been a year, y'all. This has been a whole year. Wow. I don't want to make this too long because I want to get into the message, but we have to recognize how fast and slow and how many things have happened in this year that it just feels like it's been a millennium on itself. And I don't know how I feel about 2026. You know what? We'll have the conversation in December. We're not getting to it. We're gonna finish this fifth Sunday, this last Sunday of November, talking about a high dive anime because I haven't done that yet. I got so caught up in October and Halloween stuff that I didn't do my high dive anime. So yes, we're gonna do that today. This is gonna be very special. I, as I said before, I want to talk about culture, and I don't want to talk about culture in the way you would expect a Black person to talk about it. I am going to look at culture, although it can be used as an allegory for other types of cultures, uh, in the way of what's the culture like at work or in an industry or at your school or whatever. Because I think a lot of things I want to say is going to like deal with that and make sense if you flow with me. And I want to look at culture and how to change culture and how hard that is, but how important it is too if you need to change a culture through the lens of I want to say delightful, but delightful is not the right word for it. Insane and really great anime known as Akiba Maid Wars. Yes, Akiba Maid Wars came out in 2022, a high dive exclusive if you're in the US, and boy, was this a ride. I think Akiba Maid Wars is the reason I started my high dive subscription. Not gonna lie. Don't get me wrong, there's other animes I love more than Akiba Maid Wars, and I've not been disappointed with High Dive since. But I think that was the thing that pushed me over the edge. Be like, okay, I will need to rewatch this again. If you've never seen Akiba Maid Wars, which I think some people have, it ended up being on the best original anime like nomination list for the Crunchyroll Awards. Maybe I think like not the same year it came out. Maybe it was 2023, 2024. I do not remember. But if you've never seen Akiba Maid Wars, it is essentially the 90s to, well, it's set in 1999 and Akihabara area of Tokyo. revolving around a particular maid cafe called the Oinky Doink Cafe. And we follow the main character, Nagomi, who is a fresh faced 17-year-old girl who is starting her dream job as a maid for a maid cafe, which is like all the rage in the late 90s, early 2000s. Don't get me wrong, I feel like anybody who works at a maid cafe is amazing. Bruh. And so she's joined by another new maid, Ranko, who I think is like 30, 35 or something. They do her birthday in the series. She's in her 30s, and people are like, oh, 30-year-old maid. Aren't you a little old to be deciding to change your career and be a full-time maid at a maid cafe? But we'll get into all that. So yeah, so we see the life and the training and the interworkings of a maid cafe and the collection of maid cafes that make up Akihabara, Akihabara during this time period. So when I talk about culture, right, and I think about work or job or industry culture, if you've ever had a job, if you've ever worked in an industry for more than 2 years or been in a job for about a year, you know that there's a particular culture that you get in your workplace. Whether that is everybody super serious or people like to harp on how they don't take vacation and how much extra time they have, they never take off because they're so busy. Or people who are like, don't take this job super serious. Um, I used to be a teacher, and so I can tell you, like, there's a lot of teaching culture that I think about that when I watch this show. What is this show? Abbott Elementary. Yes, there we go. When I watch Abbott Elementary, I swear I'm like, even though I didn't teach at elementary school, I taught in a mid high school. I'm like, yep, that's what teaching is like. I think the friendships, like, there's just so many pieces that you can tell somebody with experience in the school system, especially a public school system, knows. I never worked in the service industry directly, like in fast food or restaurant business, but a lot of my friends who have worked in the service or the restaurant specifically talk about how the bear is uncomfortably, like, really, really good in talking about the culture of being in the restaurant business. So, there's a lot of things I think when we know when we've been in the industry, you get to understand like the culture or the types of people who thrive or don't do well or who rise up in the ranks and continue to perpetuate a culture. I have done a lot of weird jobs too. I've used to work in tourism. I've worked at a racetrack once, which was an interesting culture. Um, and I think every job I've gone to, every industry I've move around, I can always like there when you come in, there is a legit culture around the space. And then there could be subcultures in your workplace. So maybe you're working for a multinational company or international company or whatever, or a chain, and you may bounce around from different places and you may see like, hey, the culture at my office or my chain or my store is, especially with retail, is different from what you may see in another store. I have a couple of friends who have been gone up to manager level, general manager manager level for like fast food restaurants or fast dining and even in retail, and then they get sent to other stores to help them open, or their manager leaves and they need a replacement, or just the space is failing and they need someone to come in and kind of ship them up. And they can always tell me, there's a general culture of being in this space, but also a subculture of being within those four walls of the building, the office, or whatever, the franchise that like can be different. I am not saying any particular job, or in schools too. I have to call this out for, if you go to a particular school, there's a different culture from, elementary and middle to high school. You go to different schools. And I think a lot of places, especially at substitute Todd, I like to be a teacher. I think a lot of times adults have an idea of what the culture of a school is versus the children, the students who are actually there, which I always think like thinking of subcultures, how interesting that is as well. So anyway, so you're at a place, there is a culture, and you go into the culture, and if you want to be there, you need the money, you want to feel like you're there, you kind of start like trying to fit into the culture. You kind of learn the do's and the don'ts, or else you won't fit long. Does your bosses does people show up 5 minutes before their start time? Is that the culture? Or is it kind of chill where you just come in and work whenever you need to? Do you need to like do outside hangs with your coworkers because that's the way you move forward? Or, does everybody's like, we come and do our work, go home. We're not like this fraternizing group. In your schools, is it a culture of people calling out folk who do bad things? Or is there a culture of, bullying and shaming that, no one talks about? Is there a culture for standing up for certain stuff versus other things? When you're around a groups of people, and I do believe that culture isn't just something you talk about with race or ethnicity or countries or states or geographically. I think cultures are really just built up whenever you have a group of people together. So that's why I like using this work analogy. And if you haven't done the work, if you haven't been there, then you may not know what the culture actually is. So like going back to Akiba Maid Wars, if you had told me that in the 90s, 2000s, that the Akiha Akihabara, I'm going to say this right at some point, um, cafes in the area were mafia level, I couldn't tell you were wrong at all. And that's kind of the premise of Akiba Maid Wars, is that the maid cafes pretty much operate like the Yakuza or the mafias. It's a very violent anime. As our poor new girl starting, as our poor Nagomi learns, when she gets her very first day and she has to go from the Oinky Joint Cafe to the, what was it, the Muv Love Beam, which is such a terrible name. Terrible. Wuv Moonbeam Cafe, and they try to kill her. And it's a whole shootout. That's the first episode. Spoilers, y'all. If I didn't say this before, spoilers. It's a great anime. If I spoil the best part of the first episode, it's still a wild ride. And so then she's learning about what it means to be in Akihabara and like learning the maid cafe trades. And like again, she's like innocent. She just always wanted to be a maid and it's her dream job. But there's so much other culture coming around. So like in her own cafe, in the Oinky Doink Cafe, they're a little bit lazy. They're not the biggest cafe. Their manager is a screw up and she messed up a lot of stuff, which is how she got sent to the Well Moonbeam cafe and almost killed. Um, there's a lot that she doesn't understand. And then as she starts to meet other maids and other cafes, and, there's tons of underground CD cafes, and there's a whole gang war between like the Creature Land organization, and I think it's like it's alien theme, I want to say. Um this alien theme. So there's Creature Land, so it's like all the maid cafes that are like sheep, pigs, cute cats. Like that's the Creature Land maid cafe conglomerate. And then there is the Alien Land. What is the name of their group? Mid Alien. Actually it's a cuter name. The Mid Alien group. The Mid Alien group. So they're the ones with the Love Beam and like the Space Rabbits, which or was it like the Space Usagis or Cosmic something like that. It's a whole thing. And they're rival groups and they're constantly, trying to outmaneuver the other groups and they use the mates as like the foot soldiers. That's not what Nagomi signed up for. She just wanted to like meet some masters, put a little heart, and ketchup on an omelet, do a cute little dance, sing all that kind of stuff. And here she is, you know, faced with death and dismemberment and danger and a lot of shady creatures. And she's decided, like, is this what she wants to do? Or is there a way to kind of like deal with this culture and change it? And I kind of love this story because I think it shows how hard it is to change culture, but it's not a bad idea and that it is a hard thing. I think people think, oh, I don't like working at this place and that's not for me. The culture here really sucks. Awesome. You have every right to leave, go somewhere else. I'm here for that. I think sometimes it's harder when you're like in a school, because then you don't like what school can you go to? Can you just change schools depending on where you live? Sometimes for people, especially in smaller areas, rural counties or whatnot. And right now with this economy the way it is, it's really hard just to leave your job or go somewhere else when there's not a lot of employers in your area, or it's the best paying spot. Things can be really difficult. And while there's probably some good things about the culture, which I think Nagomi would say there were some good things about working at the Okido Cafe, even though, some things are a little bit out of left field. And, Creatureland versus Mid Alien, she learns a lot more than she wants to about what they do in the dark. But like, it's not enough for her to like give up on wanting to be a maid. So let's talk about like what does it take to actually change culture and some of like the pitfalls you can get into when you are attempting to do that. So the first thing to do is to change culture, you got to kind of understand it. You can't change the culture of a place if you think you're above it, if you think it's not for you, if you plan to leave. And I think that's the first thing about Nagomi is that like after she deals with a very scary situation of the Wub Moonbeam trying to kill her, she freaks out. As you should. That was a lot to deal with, sis. Um, and then the next couple of episodes are her, sticking around and learning more about what it means to be a maid, not just in the Oinky Doink Cafe, but also in Akihabara and getting to meet other people. Luckily, Ranko is also there. She's a new maid, but she doesn't seem new to this type of islands or new to like what maid cafes are in this area, which is suspicious, but that's a major plot point later. But it's someone who like kind of keeps her safe while she's being this naive person and she's trying to learn more about what does it mean to be a maid in this series. So she first learns the culture, and then so there's parts of it she doesn't like. She doesn't like the violence. She doesn't like they're constantly being threats of harm, not to her to other maids. She doesn't like that the cafe is treated like it's a horrible place. And I mean, they are kind of like the lowest earners, so they are kicked down. Even in their own Creatureland group, they're considered like the worst. Um, and so there's something she's like, well, I don't know what I can do about it. But she goes about her day to day looking at little things. And some of the little things she does is she wants to be good at her job. So when they have a trainer come in to like help them up themselves and be better maids overall, she takes that training really hard, even though some of her coworkers are like, this is not the culture that we have at this particular cafe. This sucks. And I think at the end of the episode, you learn like there is a balance between like doing the typical thing versus doing the thing that is special for your group, which I think is pretty cool. Then she meets other maids and she meets a maid and the maid alien group, and it comes like this Romeo, not Romeo and Juliet because it's not a love thing, but it's like a sisterhood. Like she meets a friend at a rival cafe, and she thinks if we could become friends with the other maids in the cafe, maybe it'll make us like less likely to try to murder each other, which I think is a really, really good idea. You don't just think about your own group and like get that tribalism of it's us versus them, but also saying like, hey, I met someone else who thinks very similarly. Can we like link up and be friends? What I think happens a lot of times in spaces like work or school. You may be going with the flow for a while because you're learning, you're trying not to stick out too much, but then you find another person or a group of other people like, yeah, this does kind of suck. And yeah, I wish we could do this a little better. Or can we be friends? And you find, someone of the work bestie that helps you get through when you really don't like the situation that you're in. Unfortunately, the work bestie thing doesn't work out all the way for Nagomi, and she actually leaves. She leaves for a little while and goes to like a ninja cafe. She learns ninja skills. This anime is wild, all right? Just go with it. And I mean, because she's had a huge trauma that happened outside of her almost getting killed multiple times or watching her coworkers possibly die. Um, but then it comes like there's people that she met. There's her coworkers, Ranko, the other maids at the Oinky Doink, that when she hears that they're in trouble, when she hears that there's issues going on, that she comes back and she puts her skills to the test. Her ninja skills now to the test to make sure that they're okay. And so sometimes, like, yeah, you may have to take a little break when bad things happen. But if you're really truly about changing the culture, take a break, regroup, learn other skills, talk to other people. And then maybe when you're able to come back, if you didn't choose to come back, because Nagomi didn't have to come back, you can use those other skills to kind of prove your loyalty to make sure that the people that you care about are okay. Um, and then, as she does this, though, she is slowly changing the outlook and the mind of her fellow maids within her own cafe. Like the Onky Doink is the way it is because like the other maids are kind of looking out for themselves and don't really care. They kind of know they're the lowest on the totem pole, and it's like it is what it is. They know about the the violence, even though they're not actively singing out or trying it. But they're just like, this is the way things are. And Nagomi really like rubs off on them a little bit. Even up until there's this big like maid festival where they like crown like the head maid for the year and the cafe gets like a big boost of sales because of it. I think they call it like the oh, what do they call it? The Lady Omoe Festival. It's like Moe Festival activities and stuff. So like you gotta sell these things and there's a race and whatever maid cafe wins or the maid from the maid cafe wins, they become the cafe of the year. It ups her sales, and the Unky Dunk is always on the brink of closing because they don't have enough sales, they don't have enough money, all this kind of stuff. They can't pay back their debts. The manager is in debt for taking out money to keep the cafe going, and they owe like again Creatureland money because it is a syndicate pretty much. So I think you get to a point where after Nagomi has come all this things, she leaves, she comes back. You can see that she starts really like rubbing off on her coworkers, and she's like, "Let's win the Lady Omoe Festival." And normally they don't even try because they're hated. They're off the map, situated. Nobody wants to see them win, and the whole deal is like it's already rigged. Like there are a particular cafe and a particular maid is already supposed to win. Like this is routine, and while Nagomi could do it herself, I think it's really cool to watch the rest of the maids get on this and like believe in her dream, and that changed culture too. It's a small thing, but it's a big deal that like her coworkers are like, yeah, yeah, let's win this thing when they knew better. That's not the only time either. Like there's a time when like they're playing a baseball game against another maid cafe, I think from the what was formerly made aliens. And like it's like she and Nagomi really wants this to be like a baseball game to settle their differences. And violence is happening and people are getting violent, but she sticks to it like I'm just gonna play this game. And eventually it like the other groups, even the players from the other team, the other maid cafe, they decide like, no, we're gonna finish the game as a game and stop trying to turn it into a brawl. Like those little, it feels like such a little thing, but like the integrity of Nagomi starts to like change people's minds over and over again. And that doesn't mean she doesn't have setbacks. I think before we get to the last episode, like there's definitely some major setbacks. There's definitely some like really bad moments, and there's a part where Nagomi has a really bad experience. Something terrible happens and she slides. She decides that she can't fight the culture. If the culture doesn't continue to take from her, then she's gonna go into it and she's gonna go and do her worst. And I think it's a very dark moment in the story to see like how much this person who's been, trying her hardest to keep the positivity, the trying her hardest to say like we don't have to be this way, or let's find a way we can do this without violence, feeling like that's it. There's no other way around it. And it comes down to like the very last battle. And I'm not gonna spoil that for you, but I think Nagomi really proves that her convictions are more important and that being a maid was more important to her than just trying to get along to be along. And it does. And I think it does eventually change the culture. And not in the way that she thinks it. Like, we don't have this whole happy, we all hold hands, everyone who's out to get them decides to stop. I mean, there still is some blood and some murder and death involved before we get to the space where the maid cafes are no longer at war. And I think people all pay a heavy toll for it. But there's a lot to be said in Nagomi's like journey of showing other mates who kind of get up on that culture a better way. And yes, sometimes you got to take out some top leaders to make a change. I think and that's another underlying theme of the story is about leadership and how leadership really like dictates the culture. And even how it's hard for leadership to change the culture too, because then your rank and file can get mad and try to usurp you and all this kind of stuff. Um, but I think it's really important to say, like, even if you're not someone with the most the most power, there are still things little old you can do that changes culture. So I say all that to say what I think is really impressive about Akiba Maid Wars and the ability to change culture is that one, is not easy. Like, I think anybody who works at a place that is toxic or goes to a school where, the culture can be really, really bad, you have this impetus to keep your head down. And even if you want to change it, it's really, really hard to try to do it by yourself. So again, as I call out, Nagomi has to find allies, and she finds allies, and her sister maid from another different cafe, and her fellow co-workers mostly started with Renko, who again is kind of like this old hat maid who has seen, violence before, and but she believes in what Nagomi wants to do. She just tends to come up in that way. Like, she also knows the pitfalls of trying to be the pacifist in such a like violent world. And Renko has a very cool back and interesting backstory. Um, but still someone is willing to keep her safe while she like has that idealistic side of her while she's trying to make things better for the cafe and for all the maids there. The first thing is like you gotta have, like I said, first thing is hard, but the second thing is like you have an idea of what you want to have change in like little steps. Where for Akiba Maze, where it's like I don't want to be involved in violence, I don't have to shoot my way out all the time. But for like a job, it's like, hey, I want to make people take their vacations. I want people to feel like it's okay, that it's like it's okay to take time off and do work life balance, or I want us to maybe hang out more as coworkers and can trust us more, which I think is also a big step. Or maybe it's like, hey, I want to make it where it's okay for people who have families or can't hang out to not feel ostracized, that they can still be part of it. We do more things where we're not looking at the folk who can't hang out for whatever reason after work at past work hours as the bad person. And institutions like schools, it's like, okay, maybe I want us to like not allow harmful language. Like, people shouldn't be able to call someone else the R word or any type of slurs. Like, how can I start making sure that we kind of say it out, that that's something? Can I find other people who agree with me? Can I work with teachers and stuff to be like, hey, I know we say don't curse in school, but can we like make it a serious infraction for people to use this type of language that demoralizes others? Or maybe like, I don't like there's a fat shaming in school, or I don't like that it's not cool to be smart, that there's a maybe a culture of anti-intellectualism that is going on, where maybe I can grab a couple people and we can like show that you can be care about your grades and want to do well in school while also still being cool and liking yourself and having confidence. And I think that's moves on to my next point of like the third point is you do need other people there to support you. No one changes a culture by themselves, especially when you're up against hundreds, thousands of other people who have kind of bought into the culture. I think it's really, really important when you think about union organizing in a job site or for a company, that a lot of it's just building relationships and getting to know people and meeting them where they are. Where it's like, yeah, I don't like this about where we work, or yeah, I feel like I should have more protections for this, and then start talking among yourselves and finding that small group. You have to have people who are willing to back you up and willing to people who see the vision. Um, to kind of help shift things. And maybe you don't do it in an official way, like, start a union, but maybe you do it in some official ways where you talk about your vacations more and you encourage your coworkers to go on vacation and you cover for each other when they need to take time off. And you start kind of like that informal way with the lower level people, the non-managers, the non-CEOs, the non-VPs or whatever, of like showing that this is something that y'all care about and that y'all need to do, and eventually can get that written into code, written into the HR and handbooks, that this is the way we do this. There's a lot of unofficial stuff in any job, if you know this, um, that you have to deal with that is not exactly in the handbook, and managers don't tell you, but it is what it is. It's just as real as the stuff that is in the handbook. I think there's also a time where no matter how much move you're making towards changing the culture, that there's a point where the culture will push back, that the culture will come back and be like, nah, this is who we are. This is how the most of us deal with. And you will have bumps along the road. Like, there's going to be time where that, like in Akiba Maid Wars, that violence comes back even harder. There are definitely shortcomings that, like, make Nagomi leave or like cause Nagomi to doubt herself and doubt what she's trying to do. And I don't think she's even consistently thinking that she's trying to change the culture. I think she's trying to make being a maid work for her, which is even more beautiful because she's not like, I'm going to change the culture of this whole institution. It's like, I just want to be involved with this and I want to find other people who care and also just want to be maids and do it for the fun and not for a whole crime syndicate, you know? Is that too much to ask? Sometimes it is. But there'll be times where the culture will push back on you hard. Definitely. And there'll be times you feel like it's not worth it. And you have to take the time off and recalibrate and figure it out. And even sometimes there will be cost to it, whether it's your, money, whether it's your time, whether, in the case of the Akiba Maid Wars, there are some real physical issues and like costs that happen. But in the end, it was never it was never our main character by herself doing it. It was always how she stood out and tried to make things different that inspired all these other people who, again, I think there's also some backstory of like there's desperate people who also wanted things to change or had gone through their own issues and like were feeling regretful and guilt over stuff that's happened over the past decades. You never know who may end up being an ally when you're trying to live in your truth and trying to see like this is not the culture we want to have, this is not the culture we want to keep. And I think that for people who may be in situations where you can't just get up and leave, you can't just leave your state, you can't just leave your job, can't just leave your school, that you do have to be the person to say this is the kind of culture I want to be a part of, and I want to inspire the people to do that with me. And it may take a while, more than 12 episodes, more than a year of what we see in our main character's life. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Nagomi, but this is a this is very 12 episodes, you got to make it happen. So we love this for Nagomi, but this may take a while. Maybe if you're a high schooler, you may start doing this your freshman year and may not really see results until your junior, maybe even your senior year, but then you can make something happen for the freshmen coming up behind you. Maybe you started working in this job as your first year, you're just learning it. Maybe, you start doing it and you find that people who over time, the past 10 or 20 years who've been there long term, have tried but had to keep their heads down for whatever reason. Maybe when they see that you are like stepping out and doing some things, they'll have your back even a little bit silently, because sometimes people who've been around in a culture for that long do things in the background silently that helps you out that you may never know of because they kind of learn it. They know the back channels. I do think that it is important to change culture when you think it's going in the wrong way, but I think there's a lot of different ways to do that. Um, and yes, again, I'm using job and work and school culture as a euphemism for a lot of other cultures that we could be talking about changing right now. I think it's important because there's no way that a culture is completely set in stone. I think it just takes one or two people to really be different and can get other people on board to see how the difference helps them and helps everyone overall. And then next thing you know, a decade later, nobody knows about the Maid Wars. This is like violence. What are you talking about? We're just simple pig girls or simple cat girls or simple moon, space, alien, whoever who just wants to serve our masters and make sure that you have a good time. And the spirit of what maid cafes were originally started. And there's another thing I think about Akiba Maid Wars. I think the maid cafes, the tea houses, were not started off as syndicates, but eventually the culture changed. The culture changed to the point. And then people were willing to change it back because of the spirit of what you're trying to do. And I think if you are in an institution that the harmful culture that is right now wasn't what it was originally started to do, is a lot easier than, say, a harmful culture that was created to be harmful. Like, I don't think you can change the culture of policing. That is personal opinion there. But I think you can change the culture of, I don't know, your work site or your restaurant. If your manager's a jerk or people don't know how to say y'all, I think the employees themselves can help kind of change it where what your manager does doesn't affect as harshly everybody else, and see how I can get that person out of there. But that's me being the optimist. I would say that I am an optimistic realist, but I do think that it has takes somebody stepping up and saying, I want this thing to happen and I can get these people on board to do this thing with me. But I've been jabbering for over 30 minutes. I wanted to keep this brief as we talked about another High Dive exclusive. Again, Akiba Maid Wars, if you haven't seen it and you don't mind a little violence, because I know not everybody wants that in their anime, I say definitely check it out. And 12 episodes, you get that done in a weekend. That day, actually, 6 hours. That's all you need. But until next time, I hope you have, again, a fantastic week, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye! The Blerd Church of Anime podcast is produced by Black Star, aka Lauren Tillman, written by Lauren Tillman, and hosted by Lauren Tillman. Music created by EL47.